Hello and thanks for tuning in to the Cybersecurity Sessions podcast season 3 from Netacea. I'm your host Andy Ash, the CISO at Netacea, and this season we've decided to invite peers from the world of cybersecurity to join us and discuss the issues that are affecting them and the cyber industry. Today I am once again privileged to be joined by two guests. First is my colleague at Netacea and the former host of the podcast and certainly a friend of the podcast, Cyril Noel-Tagoe, who is our senior threat researcher. Cyril, do you just want to say hi?
Hi everyone, it's good to be back. It's been a while.
And next, I'm delighted to welcome Sam Stepanyan, an application security architect who is a global board member for OWASP and the OWASP London chapter lead. Sam, do you just want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you very much for having me. Great to be here.
Oh, you're very welcome. So today we wanted to talk about a few different things. Obviously, we've got Sam here from OWASP with a wealth of experience and knowledge around that organisation. So we wanted to talk about why OWASP is highly relevant, not just the top 10 that I think we all know. How Sam got involved in OWASP and how it shapes other aspects of your career, because that's really interesting to me. And then we want to touch on the Blade framework, which is a framework that Cyril has worked extensively on, and just look at how we have tried at Netacea, along with peers in the industry, to kind of standardise and talk about business logic attacks. However, as ever, we'll ask the opening question. Now, Sam, I'm going to ask you this. Most people are on the fence when it comes to the answer. So I'm not necessarily looking for an extreme answer, but let's find out. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the logical end game for AI in human society? 1 being we succumb to our robot overlords and enter an age of servitude, and 10 being humanity is freed from the shackles of Earth and goes off to explore the universe in peace.
Wonderful question. I think a lot of people are asking me this, but look, judging from the current state of AI, right, I'm still sat on the fence, so I will probably on the 6 or 7 on that scale, to be honest, because yes, of various reasons. And I've experienced different types of AI engines. And I think at the moment, most people judge AI simply by looking at large language models, because that seems to be like 99% of things referred to as AI. But because I had experience with other types of AI, that's kind of the reason for my answer. And actually, to provide some interesting context to it, I was recently invited to IBM headquarters in London, along with a whole bunch of other specialists in application security and DevSecOps, and we were treated to a session of the Boston Dynamics robot dog, Spot the dog. Wow. So having this I want to call it creature, right? But it was a robot, right? Walking, in the crowd of, I think we probably about 20 people, 20 experts, having it demonstrated and understanding how it works and what kind of sensors it's using. I think that put a lot of things into perspective for me in terms of AI. And it's one thing when you type things on a computer and you get ChatGPT providing you with an answer, completely different when you see a working robot right next to you, which is looking at you with this webcam eye.
I mean, that's fascinating. I have actually seen one of those, but they had one in city centre of Manchester, just sort of walking about with its handler. And my immediate reaction was, if it had like a way of delivering emergency aid to a natural disaster, what a wonderful invention. However, if it had a machine gun strapped to its back, it'd be terrifying, absolutely terrifying. So it's all about the use, right? It's all about the context and the use in which you're putting these new technologies into.
Exactly.
They are incredible machines.
Incredible. It's unbelievable. And then I experienced another side of AI, because when I was at San Francisco a couple of months ago, when I was at OWASP Global AppSec San Francisco conference, I took a ride in the AI-driven taxi in a driverless car called Waymo. So it's a Google subsidiary, and it was absolutely incredible. And I had to record the video because a lot of my colleagues were saying, Sam, where are you not scared for your life? You're trusting your life to a computer. And to be honest, it was very weird and futuristic because I was sat in the back seat and there's like touch screen with a button saying start ride. So you touch this button and the car just start driving and you can see the steering wheel is moving left and right. And I'm like, it's just so scary at the beginning. But it was the best ride of my life because I realized that the AI is actually handling the task of driving very, very well, much better than human. And then I realized, because I saw a lot of people on the streets of San Francisco taking these driverless cars, and then I found out that they're really popular because, for example, if we talk about our other taxi services like Uber or Lyft, there are a lot of complaints that the drivers are not usually very good because people who take these jobs are not particularly good drivers, right? And that's why a lot of people prefer this Waymos, the AI-driven taxis, because the ride is so smooth and they're very you feel very, very safe. At 40 minutes that I was driven in that taxi, I felt very, very safe, much safer than with a human driver.
I was in San Francisco this year and I couldn't actually get on the app. There was a waiting list for the app, so I don't know whether that's changed.
Andrew, it's a hacker mentality, right? So there was a problem because the app only takes US issued credit cards, right? And I thought, okay, that's an obstacle. You probably hit exactly the same problem.
But definitely hit that.
But then I realized I can pay with Google Pay, and that worked seamlessly.
Oh, okay, right,
that's how I managed to use the app. Call the taxi, and yeah, it came up. I pushed the button in the app. It opened the doors. I sat inside. The doors locked, and there's a big button inside saying "Start Ride." Yeah, and this is how the journey started.
I shall bear that in mind for my next trip. But yeah, I was desperate to have a go. I know our CEO and CFO both got in one together, which there's risk there with both of them, but they both survived the experience, so that's good.
Oh, wonderful.
Thanks for that. It's really good insight, actually. The Boston Dynamics piece is absolutely fascinating. I think you're probably quite lucky to get that kind of demo like up close, because we see this on newsreel, on LinkedIn, etc. And it's only when you actually see it that it hits home that this is very real.
Exactly. Similarly with a taxi, right? I watched probably over 10 videos of people taking this driverless taxi rides, but so I kind of knew what to expect. But still, when you get inside and you see that steering wheel moving all by itself and the car just driving and braking and avoiding pedestrians and cyclists and some buses and the crazy motorbike riders in San Francisco, then you say, wow, all right. Yeah. that's a different type of AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to our first topic. So Sam, you're massively involved in OWASP operationally. As a global board member and as the London chapter leader, which is not a small chapter, I know that. How did you first get involved with OWASP?
Oh, that's an interesting story because my journey to OWASP started almost 20 years ago in 2005 because I was a software developer originally. I come from the development background. And I came across OWASP just like probably a lot of people around that time because of regulation, because of PCI DSS. Because I was working with a team of developers and designers, and we were working on a project which was an e-commerce project. And then to my horror, I discovered that this project that the team was working on, they were storing credit card numbers unencrypted in a database. And then I saw an article, I think it was Computer Weekly magazine back in the day, which said, oh, this new piece of regulation coming called Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, or PCI DSS, and everyone taking credit card numbers online, they have to comply with it. And then I got hold of that standard, downloaded the PDF, and there was a requirement there to make sure that the code is reviewed for security, following, and to make sure that it's free from OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. I'm like, what is this OWASP top 10? So there was a hyperlink there. So I clicked on it and that's how I got hooked. But I didn't know in 2005 that there was already an OWASP London chapter, which was actually started in 2004. And I only discovered it in 2007, again, by just clicking around on some findings on Google. And there was a mailing list mentioning that there's actually OWASP London chapter, and they have regular meetings. And some of them happen in a pub, and some of them happen in different offices of different organizations all around central London. So yeah, I just clicked and joined, and turned up at one of the meetings, and I really loved what I see because what I could see there, because there were quite a few like-minded people like myself, mostly people who came from development background, but there were some people who were security engineers, who were penetration testers, and they had some really engaging speakers, great talks, and they also had pizza and beer. And there you go. I became an attendee. I was actively attending, asking questions, and I was learning a lot. And then one day, the then chapter leader approached me and another very active participant in OWASP, a guy called Sharif Mansour, and say, "Hey guys, I'm moving away from the UK, relocating. Would you be willing to take over the chapter and continue running it? Because obviously it would be good to make sure that it's still there." And we said yes. We agreed, and that's how we became chapter leaders, and then started growing it. And yeah, I think now it's of the probably top chapters in the world in terms of the number of people attending, number of people watching our live streams and our recorded talks online as well. So yeah, we continue to grow it. Actually, we hit a very interesting problem. We've run out of companies with office space big enough to host this many people, because
I remember then, because that is pretty big, because there's some big companies in London. Just in terms of around, because you basically said PCI was your intro into security, and I think that anybody who's working in sort of e-commerce, anybody who's working with any kind of payments, that tends to be the first kind of bite you take into security, just because it's mandated if you're transacting or processing or doing anything with credit cards online. Did you ever go to any of the rant meetups?
Of course I did, yes.
Yeah, because that was very much pizza and beer, but obviously it didn't quite take off in the same way that
yeah, and to be honest,
Centre that ran that, as I remember.
That's right. Yeah. But the interesting thing about rants is they were mostly for people doing like a technical risk governance and compliance. And obviously everyone was ranting about how bad things are. And there weren't that many talks around application security, to be honest. But it was still, I think, absolutely a great community to talk to people who are on the compliance side of things, and obviously me being on the engineering side of things, and see how we can get together to solve all the challenges which are ongoing right now. We still haven't fixed the security issue, and there's new regulation coming, and the number of vulnerabilities and the data breaches keeps increasing.
Surely does. So probably a good idea to kind of jump into. I mean, most security professionals will know OWASP, and they'll know OWASP Top 10 from such compliance as PCI, and you have to be, you have to adhere to the standards set and be able to prove that. But I guess not everybody knows the full breadth of OWASP, and what would be really good is if you can give us an overview of what OWASP is, what's its mission, and the bits that we probably don't know. I think that's the most important bit.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, for those people who don't know, OWASP originally stood for Open Web Application Security Project. This is how it was created. And it was originally created in 2001 as a mailing list, and then as a very basic website to start to provide some guidelines to developers how to do secure coding. It was renamed recently, I think almost 2 years ago now, to be Open Worldwide Application Security Project, to highlight the fact that we're no longer web specific. 20 years ago, everyone was talking about web apps, but now it's not just web. No one refers to web as web anymore, right? We have mobile applications, we have cloud applications, we have Internet of Things applications, and most importantly, now we have cloud, not just cloud, but also have AI applications. And a lot of people keep forgetting that artificial intelligence is also a software application. So that was the story behind the renaming. So it's now called Open Worldwide, our application security project, trying to cover all applications. And it is a non-profit foundation. And it's a charity actually in the United States. So if you're a company based in the United States, you donate to OWASP, you sponsor OWASP, you get the benefit of the tax break as well that you can get. So we're actually a registered educational charity, and obviously our mission is to promote all the promote secure software and be the community which promotes secure software development through education, tools, and collaboration.
Wow.
So that is the organization. Again, back then when I first read the letters OWASP, and I thought this is like this massive mysterious organization which sets all these standards and the guidelines and things like OWASP Top 10, which was back then absolutely mysterious. But then when I started going to the OWASP London meetups and then started traveling to the OWASP global conferences, I just realized that it's such a cool community because everyone's a volunteer, right? At OWASP, we only have 7 members of staff at OWASP. Everyone else, including board members, they're all volunteers and people who donate their own personal time to work on these projects, to create all the standards, guidelines, and software tools, and even resources, things like videos and cheat sheets, right, for everyone to be secure and to know how to build secure software. And yeah, I figured out this is not some scary organization. It's just a community. It's some amazing people who are all very friendly, and they come from different countries, different backgrounds, and I just fit right in. I really fell in love with the community. And this is the feedback that I'm seeing. A lot of people saying that the OWASP probably is very proud to have a very, very good kind of closely knit community, even though we're all worldwide. In almost every single country in the world, you will find an OWASP chapter, and you will find people working on OWASP projects and guidelines. So I think the strength of the community is... and the friendliness of it is and the way how it's welcoming everyone, right? So all OWASP meetups worldwide, they open to everyone. You just need to be interested in security, and there is no sort of you don't have to pay to go to the meetups, and you don't have to have like a specific knowledge to attend those. They're free and open to everyone, and so are all the projects. Everything's free and open source, and people donate their spare time to and volunteer to to make the world a little bit better for everyone.
Yeah, it's that kind of community sharing. Everyone in security, and this has been true of tech forever, we all share the same problems. We're all battling similar adversaries, similar budget constraint, etc. So having people to be able to actually interact with and know that it's not just you, and get their input into the things that you're trying to solve or trying to build is really, really important. So yeah, no, it's wonderful. Now, in terms of, so Cyril's very modest guy, but Cyril has done almost every job there is to do in the security field, and you're undoubtedly a practitioner. So, Cyril, from your perspective, how much influence does OWASP have across the industry and across your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it earlier that everyone in security knows of OWASP, and they might not be able to name exactly what's in the top 10, but they've definitely heard of the OWASP top 10, and they can probably give you like top 3 out of those. I think my first introduction to OWASP was back when I was in university. So I did a computer science degree, so a lot of that's software development, and we had this one module called professional computing, and they were like, if you want to take your career as a software developer, there are some standards that you definitely need to know. And there's the standards like ISO 27001, and that kind of stuff. And then there's also the OWASP top 10. It's like, well, what's this? And then that almost becomes a checklist for you as you're going through uni. So I think not even just people in security, but in the development space, it's now such an ingrained part of just doing development. You come up being taught it.
Yeah, yeah, and in terms of the usage, does it have a lot on the threat intelligence? Obviously, you're threat analyst, senior threat analyst. Sorry, Cyril. Does it have? Is there any aspect of OWASP that impinges on that, or that has guidelines for threat?
Yeah, definitely. So even just looking at the top 10, right? The top 10 gives you the weaknesses or the vulnerabilities there, but the threats are exploiting those vulnerabilities. So you can't have one without the other. So having that there, and also having that as almost a taxonomy and a widely known language helps you to translate what you're seeing to kind of how it actually happens in practice. I think you see it probably a bit more in the application testing and penetration testing space, because they're directly going to the applications and saying these are the problems. But in the threat intelligence space, there's also got that overlap.
And Sam, from a product perspective, do you think OWASP is underutilized when we're thinking about how to build applications, systems, infrastructure out? I don't know, it's application based, but basically cloud is infrastructure and application all rolled into one quite often. Is it something that's underutilized in terms of theory and good practice? Or when you are speaking to people from your chapter and around the world, is it something that is always encompassed? Is it something that is prevalent everywhere?
I think it's still underutilized, and it's very interesting to hear that Cyril actually had an introduction to OWASP at university. But here actually comes a very important issue that I need to highlight, because OWASP Top 10 is not a standard. OWASP Top 10 is just an awareness document. And this is what we need to understand, that OWASP actually has a standard, and that standard is called ASVS, Application Security Verification Standard. So for everyone who actually wants to have a standard, ASVS is the right place that they need to look at. Top 10 was created, I can put it as a marketing trick to get attention of the boards, because when it was created, the creator was Top 10, Jeff Williams, just came up with this idea because he was so frustrated that people didn't listen, right, about vulnerabilities. It was like, how do we get the people's attention? It's like, here's like a top 10 things that are the most critical and you should be paying attention to. And that's how it was born. But again, OWASP Top 10 is an awareness document. It's just a place to start if you don't know what to start from. And speaking of OWASP being underutilized, I think the application security verification standard is the standard which I'm not seeing people using. I know some industries who are using it. Again, for example, financial services and regulated industries, they are aware of it and they're using it. And there are lots of other OWASP projects which, for example, help to do security by design, right? Which I think is quite important. I think this is where underutilization is coming from. A lot of people just heard about OWASP Top 10, and I hear every time people saying, "Oh, we're OWASP Top 10 compliant." It's like, remember, this is not true. You cannot be compliant with OWASP Top 10 because it is not a compliant standard and it's not tick boxes. And actually, in the latest OWASP Top 10, we actually one of the items on OWASP Top 10 is something that you cannot even tick the box easily with any, for example, vulnerability scanning tool, because it's talking about insecure design being of one of the top 10 things you should be concerned about. And yeah, you can't really just tick the box saying, hey, we've done a pen testing, our design is secure. No. So I believe OWASP is underutilized, and a lot of people are still unaware of the over 200 projects that OWASP has, which are all free and open source, which can help you in your daily life, how to design and build and test your applications to be secure. I invite everyone to basically go and check out all the wonderful projects that we have, and start from things like flagship projects, which include standards such as ASVS, which is the first OWASP standard. But when I have another OWASP standard called Cyclone DX, which has now been accepted as an ECMA standard, so it is an international standard. And we're now looking at our third international standard in AI security, to be accepted into NIST. So OWASP LLM security standard is coming up as the next candidate to be widely accepted. And if you look at both the EU guidelines on AI and US NIST guidelines on AI, they're all based on OWASP materials.
So it's interesting. That's a subject that's come up a couple of times on this season of the podcast, which is how do we prove that AI is secure? How do we give people confidence in the solutions that we're building that have generative models in them? And really, it's quite difficult to explain in your own terms when a lot of other disciplines, areas of technology do have frameworks and standards in place. And it's certainly something we're considering for 2025 at Netacea is can we align with the standard for our use of our machine learning? I believe that customers are going to be coming to us frequently to ask for that going forward. So no, it's an obvious one to do next, right? Across the board of standards. So I was going to ask you kind of answered it, but just to dig in, if you were to give anyone advice on how to get started and how to start to build applications securely, I think you mentioned some of the resources there. Is there a pattern that people generally fall into? Is there any advice you could give someone who is just starting out on this?
That's right. Yes, of course, OWASP Top 10 is there, but the projects and like OWASP SVS is another important one. But we also have some tools which can help you start your journey and start from secure design. And there are several projects that you probably never heard of, so I want to highlight some of them. So one of them is called Security RAT, and it has a logo of a rat. And RAT stands for Security Requirement Automation Tool. So it is actually a very useful tool which allows you to generate your security requirements. So this tool will have a questionnaire. So it will ask you what kind of software you are developing, right? And will ask you several questions. And then it will generate security requirements for you. And it can even put these requirements in a Jira ticket for you so you can actually track them. So again, not many people heard of it, but yeah, people say, well, how do we bake security in? How do we do security by design? We'll start from requirements. Where do we get the security requirements from? Well, there's one project. There's another project which is called OWASP User Security Stories. Again, a lot of people never ever heard of it, but we have two kind of developer backlog related projects. There's one called User Security Stories, and there's another one which is called Abuse Stories or Attacker Stories. So these are the stories that people can take and just inject directly into their agile backlog to give to developers. So they know what to expect. They have their stories on what can possibly go wrong with abuser. And they say, as an attacker, for example, again, I'll give you your example, right, which is probably quite close to your heart. One of these abuse stories says, as an attacker, I can brute force the login screen by utilizing a stolen list of usernames and passwords from the internet, right? Mm-hmm. And if you look at developers developing an application, usually the requirement is the application should have a login screen with username and password. If username and password is correct, the user should be logged in. User password is incorrect, they should get a message incorrect. Login and have a button forgot password, right? And you can see there is no mentioning of security whatsoever. And this is why if you use the OWASP abuse stories, you'll start injecting all the questions saying, oh, this is what an attacker can do.
Yeah, a lot of the credential stuff in that we see is on, not all, but some, certainly on older sites, it's where the difference between a success and a failed login is incredibly explicit, and passes back information that basically a hacker can utilize to determine whether a username exists, to determine whether, work out the cadence that they can credential stuff at before getting rate limited or being blocked by the application from logging. And yeah, there's an absolute, yes. I think actually we could really add to those scenarios, because we've probably seen most of them. But
that would be awesome. And again, this is all free and open source, so open for collaboration and contribution. So please do collaborate and contribute.
Yeah, well, no, we'll talk about that afterwards. That's interesting. Just to move on a little bit, Netacea have kind of developed and now open sourced the Blade framework, which is the business logic attack definition framework, which kind of it describes a set of attacks that is different to your traditional security attacks, and credential stuffing is absolutely part of that. There is some crossover with OWASP, with other standards and frameworks. Now we have in the room Cyril, who said is very modest. So Cyril and his colleagues pretty much wrote the Blade framework. So can you tell us what the Blade framework is and why we felt there was a need for it at Netacea?
Yeah, I mean, so when we were looking at these business logic attacks and we were trying to kind of taxonomize them, we're looking at MITRE attack, really, and we're looking and saying, okay, well, these aren't on there. How do we explain to different stakeholders what they are? How do we build out these kill chains? I think around that time, there was also an OWASP project, the OWASP Automated Threat project, I believe, around that time, which had some stuff in it as well, but it wasn't a full kind of framework. So we thought, okay, let's look at that. Let's look at MITRE. How can we bring kind of the best of both worlds there? And it really started with us kind of just building kill chains. So this is the life cycle of an attack. Okay, what are the specific tactics and techniques which are being used at these phases? And we got to the point that we had a few kill chains, and we're like, okay, well, we can actually build out these phases and this matrix from that kill chain. And what we found when we did it is that not only was it really useful for us, but it was really useful for people we were sharing with. And then it was like, well, there's no use of this just being a kind of our thing. Let's actually get this out. Let's get people getting engaged with it. And now we've got a group of people from loads of different companies, including some of our competitors, all engaged with it. And I mean, it's great because the more we share as a security industry, I think the better we get as a security industry.
No, exactly. And I think there's a huge amount of value in being able to standardize language where there is no standard. That is number one, and there's plenty of examples of that throughout years of technology. And Blade definitely does that. So it is an open project now. How's adoption of Blade been across the industry, and how do you think it's helping security professionals?
Yeah, it's been great. So, I mean, one of the funny things is we've been in conversations with some companies, and they've said, "Oh, you guys do bot management. Oh, have you heard of the Blade framework?" And we're like, "Yeah, funny that. Yes,
yeah." We are, but no, we're not the Blade framework. It is an open source. It is an open source project.
But yeah, so that really shows the adoption in the industry. I think one of the really useful things, because bot attacks and business logic attacks generally, they're not your traditional cybersecurity attack, and you've got a lot of different stakeholders in kind of on the defense for, let's say, an attack that's hitting, a scraping attack, let's say on a website, right? Which would be a traditional security attack. That would still be a attack on Blade, but it might be the marketing team that's picking that up because suddenly they've seen a spike in traffic and they're not sure whether this is good traffic, whether they should be falling into their analytics or not. So they're talking, or they're raising it with another team that's somehow getting into security, and they're all calling it different things because they're all coming from different disciplines. But what Blade really did is allow everyone to start speaking that same language. So I think especially because of the nature of business logic attacks, has really helped to kind of make it easier for people to communicate and ultimately solve these problems.
Yeah, where there's shared language, there's an opportunity to set a shared solution. An understanding of the problem is the first step to solving the problem, and these are all trite cliches, but it's absolutely true. If we all call the same thing, we've got a better chance of understanding it together. So, So Sam, I mean, you've already touched on this with the AI potential next step for OWASP, but how important do you think it is that we as an industry keep developing these frameworks as new types of threats emerge?
I think it's very important, and it's actually very important to keep these open source, because obviously with the advancement of AI and machine learning, right? It's all good. We go and happily use ChatGPT to help us summarize meeting minutes or help us write emails, or help us generate various images. I do use it, by the way, to generate images for my OWASP London proof of attendance protocol NFTs. So people attending our meetups, they get a little digital badge in their crypto wallet. So again, and I use AI to generate this digital sticker proof of attendance thing. But what we should remember about is all the attackers, right? They use AI as well, and they use AI to bypass our AI, right? So as you rightly know, one of the biggest problems now is looking at, for example, Blade framework, right? Is capture avoidance, because yes, it's all good that capture is the Alan Turing's test to tell computers and humans apart, but computers are getting more and more smart, and they are solving the tasks in those capture challenges. And I think, especially if you look at the automation and business logic attack scenarios, I think this is what we need to make sure that we continue learning and we continue developing and understand the new threats which are coming. Because if I look at, for example, like 3 years ago, for example, the only capture avoidance kind of services were humans, where a whole bunch of people, mostly in countries like China, paid, I don't know, three pennies for ticking the box saying I'm not a robot. It was like a capture solvers as a service, capture resolution as a service, whatever it was called, also known as a crimeware, right? And nowadays, no, it's different, because people use AI and criminals use AI to bypass capture. So it will be very interesting to learn, for example, how you are, how much of these kind of attacks you are seeing, and basically what kind of defenses now you recommend in terms of all the AI enabled capture solvers.
Yeah, well, Cyril is in a unique position to answer this one, because I think, were you a capture solver for a while, Cyril, or was that somebody else? Because we needed to understand this. So we obviously, infiltrate's not the right word. It's not that difficult to become a capture solver for money. You just don't make a lot.
Yeah. I think that's need to identify all the pedestrian crossings, right? And all the fire hydrants and all the buses.
Yeah, so I mean, you do get. So I did do it for a while. I didn't last a whole day. You have a little thing at the top which tells you how much you made. I've done about 10 captures, and I hadn't yet made like 1% of a penny yet. And at that point, I was like, no, this isn't for me. But yeah, no, the AI solvers, that's probably the most, like, even before we had kind of the LLM boom, that was the one kind of application of AI that you could definitely say was being used. And that's a byproduct of kind of captures originally being used to help train vision models, right? That's the reason why you're told to select, these cars or buses or numbers on a door frame, right? And it was only a matter of time before the AI caught up with it. But yeah, as an industry, it's definitely something that we need to deal with, and something that the Blade framework obviously needs, as it evolves, needs to provide solutions. And what are they doing once they go past that? Because that's kind of the current state. But what happens next after that? Is that the only place that they're using AI? Are they moving to other places? And how do we capture that as well?
Yeah. Yeah, I think what we found about the automated AI versus human capture farms, that machines are better at passing capture than humans are,
Yes,
which is
100%.
very ironic based on what the actual test is. So yeah, it's a fascinating one, and from a kind of actual nuts and bolts approach to how we deal with this, we only really look at capture as a piece of data in a very big data set. It's not necessarily the mitigation of the attack that capture is there. And we have we've done a lot of work lately because we do provide capture as a mitigation technique, but we've done a lot of work in the last sort of 18 months to feed in back into that machine learning loop what actually happens if a capture is passed. Because the challenge with capture pass is that it's either a false positive, which we don't want, and our customers definitely don't want, or it's a really complicated attack that someone is paying a lot of money to persist through capture farms. And it's a tough problem to solve, but we look at it as a data point rather than a definite whether capture's been attempted, capture's been passed. It doesn't give us a definitive answer on the behavior of that entity on the application. So no, it's really interesting that you brought that up. Actually, I think did we write a white paper, Cyril? I believe there's some
Yeah, I
research out there.
don't think we released it publicly,
Okay.
but we.
Contact Netacea to read it.
Yeah, that was back when I did my little stint as a capture solver.
Yeah. I wish we had a video of that. That would have been great.
Would not recommend.
Cool. Okay, so I think we're pretty much out of time. So thank you to Sam and Cyril for joining me today. If you have any questions for us, please either leave a comment if you're listening via Spotify or YouTube, or you can mention us in our X account at CybersecPod, or email podcast@netacea.com. Please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And finally, thanks for listening. And we'll see you next time for more cybersecurity sessions.